My name is Serena. This is a place for fictional stories, psychological horror and mystery, told slowly and without shock. If you enjoy listening more than watching, you're in the right place. Stay with me.
There are places in Hawaii where tourists should never go, not because they're dangerous in the conventional sense, no cliffs to fall from, no sharks to fear, but because they're sacred, protected by something older than tourism, older than the resorts and the cruise ships and the Instagram photos. These places are called kapu, forbidden, and when someone breaks that taboo, when they take what doesn't belong to them from sacred ground, the islands remember. The islands always remember. This is the story of Marcus Webb, a man who thought paradise was his to consume. He learned differently. Chapter 1. Arrival. Marcus Webb stepped off the plane at Kona International Airport into heat that hit him like a wall. The warm, fragrant air was so different from Seattle's perpetual drizzle that for a moment he just stood there on the tarmac, letting it sink in. He was finally here. Finally away from the office, the endless spreadsheets, the fluorescent lights and recycled air. 2 weeks in paradise. 2 weeks to remember who he was before the job consumed him. His rental car was a Jeep Wrangler, doors off, perfect for the island lifestyle he'd seen in 1,000 travel vlogs. He programmed the GPS with the address of his rental house, a secluded property on the Hamakua coast, north side of the Big Island. The listing had promised authentic Hawaiian experience, complete privacy, and stunning ocean views. What it hadn't mentioned was how remote it actually was. The drive took Marcus through the tourist zone's first Kailua Kona with its waterfront shops and restaurants, then up the coast where luxury resorts gleamed white against black lava rock. But as he continued north, the development fell away. The highway narrowed, dense jungle pressed in from both sides, broken only by glimpses of ocean cliffs dropping hundreds of feet to churning surf. His GPS led him off the highway onto a smaller road, then onto a dirt track that wound through thick rainforests. Massive ferns overhung the path, tree roots buckled the ground. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way, but Marcus found himself checking his phone nervously. 2 bars of signal, then 1, then none. The house appeared suddenly through a break in the trees. It was stunning, a modern structure of glass and dark wood, cantilevered out over a cliff with panoramic ocean views, exactly like the photos. Marcus felt his anxiety ease as he parked the Jeep. This was worth the isolated location. This was what he'd paid for. He grabbed his bags and approached the front door. A lockbox hung from the handle. The owner had emailed him the code. Inside he found the key in a handwritten note. Aloha. Welcome to Halamona. Please treat this home and the land with respect. Do not venture beyond the stone wall at the north edge of the property. Do not remove anything from the grounds. Enjoy your stay. Kalani. Marcus pocketed the key and crumpled the note, tossing it into a nearby trash can. Every rental had these kinds of warnings. Don't break stuff. Don't steal stuff. Standard liability protection. Nothing to worry about. The house's interior was as impressive as its exterior. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the ocean. The decor was minimalist, clean lines, natural materials, local art on the walls. The kitchen was fully equipped. The bedroom had a king bed facing the water. The bathroom had an outdoor shower surrounded by bamboo. Marcus could already feel the tension draining from his shoulders. This was exactly what he needed. He unpacked quickly, changed into shorts and a tank top, then grabbed a beer from the fridge and stepped out onto the deck. The view was spectacular. Waves crashed against black rocks far below. The sun was descending toward the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and orange. In the distance, he could see Mauna Kea rising above the clouds. This was paradise. Marcus spent the evening exploring the house and grounds. The property was larger than he'd expected, maybe 2 acres, most of it wild jungle. True to the note's description, a low stone wall marked the northern boundary, running from the cliff edge back into the forest. The wall was ancient-looking, constructed of black lava rock, fitted together without mortar. Marcus walked along it, beer in hand, until the wall disappeared into thick vegetation. He could see something beyond it: flat ground, cleared of jungle, maybe 50 feet square. Stone platforms or ruins of some kind. Probably an old foundation from a previous structure. He thought about hopping the wall for a closer look, but the sun was setting and he was tired from travel. Tomorrow, he'd explore more. Tomorrow. Back inside, Marcus made a simple dinner, watched the stars emerge over the ocean, and fell asleep to the sound of waves. His last thought before drifting off was how grateful he was to be here, how far away Seattle and his stressful life felt. He slept deeply and peacefully until 3 in the morning. Chapter 2. The stone Marcus woke to the sound of drums. Not loud, not close, but rhythmic and persistent, echoing from somewhere in the jungle. A deep, resonant boom 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 that seemed to vibrate through the house itself. He lay in bed, disoriented, heart pounding. The drums continued. Boom, boom, boom. Then they stopped as suddenly as they'd started. Silence. Marcus checked his phone. 3:13 a.m. He listened hard, but heard only the ocean and the normal sounds of the forest insects, wind in the trees. No drums. Had he dreamed it? He got up and walked through the house, checking windows and doors. Everything was locked. Nothing seemed disturbed. The jungle beyond the windows was dark and still. Jet lag, he decided. His internal clock was all messed up. He'd probably dreamed the drums some combination of unfamiliar sounds filtered through a sleeping brain. Marcus returned to bed but couldn't fall back asleep. He lay there, watching the stars wheel past the skylight until dawn grayed the windows. Then he got up, made coffee, and stepped out onto the deck to watch the sunrise. The morning was glorious. Light spilled across the ocean in shades of pink and gold. Birds called from the jungle. The air smelled of plumeria and salt. Whatever weirdness the night had held, daylight banished it. Marcus made breakfast: eggs, toast, fresh papaya from a bowl the owner had left, then decided to explore the property more thoroughly. He was on vacation. He should see everything the place had to offer. He followed the stone wall again, this time in full daylight. The cleared area beyond it was easier to see now. Definitely ruins of some kind, stone platforms arranged in a rectangular pattern, with what looked like carved pillars at regular intervals. Old Hawaiian architecture, probably. There were historical sites all over the islands. Marcus found a spot where the wall had partially collapsed, creating an easy crossing point. He hesitated, remembering the note, "Do not venture beyond the stone wall," but that was clearly just the owner covering their liability. The ruins were on the property. They wouldn't have warned him away from somewhere dangerous on his own rental. He crossed over. The cleared area was maybe 50 feet on each side, bordered by jungle on 3 sides, and the stone wall on the 4th. The ground was bare earth, black volcanic soil, with grass and weeds beginning to reclaim it. The stone platforms were weathered and ancient, covered in moss and lichen. Marcus walked between them, examining the structures. They were impressive, massive lava rocks, stacked and fitted together with remarkable precision. Some of the stones had carvings on them, geometric patterns, stylized figures that might have been people or animals. This was definitely a historical site, probably a Hawaiian temple. Marcus had read about them when researching the trip. Many had been built centuries ago, dedicated to various gods and purposes. Most were protected now, off limits to development, which raised the question, why had someone built a rental house right next to one? Marcus was pondering this when he noticed the stones. Not the platform stones, these were smaller, maybe the size of his fist, arranged in a neat spiral pattern on the ground near the center of the site. Lava rock, but different from the structural stones. Smooth, almost polished. Each one had markings carved into its surface. They were beautiful. Marcus had never seen anything quite like them. He picked one up. It was warm in his hand, despite sitting on cool ground. The carvings were intricate circular patterns that seemed to spiral inward endlessly. The stone had weight beyond its size, a density that felt significant. Marcus turned it over, examining both sides. It really was remarkable. A perfect souvenir. He could put it on his desk at work, a reminder of this trip. No one would miss a single small stone from hundreds. He pocketed it and continued exploring. The rest of the Hawaiian yielded no more discoveries, just more weathered platforms and a single wooden sign, faded almost to illegibility. Kapu, sacred site. Do not disturb. Marcus felt a twinge of guilt about the stone, but pushed it aside. It was just a rock. There were millions like it on this volcanic island. Taking one wouldn't hurt anything. He climbed back over the wall and returned to the house. The rest of the day passed pleasantly. Marcus drove down to a nearby beach and spent hours swimming in water so clear he could see tropical fish darting around his feet. He ate lunch at a food truck that served the best fish tacos he'd ever tasted. He bought groceries at a local market and chatted with the cashier about good hikes in the area. By the time he returned to the house, the sun was setting again. Marcus made dinner. poured himself a glass of wine, and settled onto the deck to watch the sky turn colors. The stone was still in his pocket. He took it out, holding it up to catch the fading sunlight. The carving seemed to shift in the angled light, creating the illusion of movement. Beautiful. Marcus set it on the deck railing and went inside to refill his wine. When he came back, the stone was gone. He stared at the empty railing, confused. Had the wind blown it off? That seemed impossibly. It had been too heavy. He leaned over the railing, looking down. Nothing. Just the deck below, and then the cliff dropping to the ocean. Marcus searched the deck methodically, under the chairs, behind the grill, along the edges. Nothing. The stone had vanished. Strange, but not impossible. Maybe he'd placed it less securely than he'd thought. Maybe it had rolled and fallen through a crack. Old houses like this probably had gaps in the decking. He gave up searching as darkness fell and went inside. The stone wasn't important, just a curiosity. He'd forget about it by morning, but he didn't forget, because that night, the drums returned, and this time, they were closer. Chapter 3. The Drums. Marcus woke at 3 a.m. exactly to the sound of drums. Boom, boom, boom. Louder than the night before. More drums, more rhythmic complexity. He could distinguish at least 3 different tones: deep bass, mid-range, something higher and sharper. They weren't just beating randomly. There was a pattern, a purpose. He got out of bed and went to the window. The jungle was dark, but not empty. He could see movement in the tree shapes flickering between the trunks. And there was light, a reddish glow, like firelight, emanating from somewhere beyond the stone wall. The drums continued. They weren't just coming from one direction anymore. The sound seemed to surround the house, echoing from the jungle on all sides. Marcus grabbed his phone to record this evidence. It was real. Not a dream, but when he opened the camera app, the screen showed nothing but darkness. The night vision mode engaged automatically, turning everything green and grainy, but the jungle looked normal. No movement, no light, just trees and shadows. Yet when he looked with his naked eyes, he could still see the shapes moving, still see the fire glow. The drums grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to be building towards something, a climax, a peak. Marcus felt his heart rate sinking with the rhythm involuntarily. Boom boom, boom boom. Then, as suddenly as they'd started, the drums stopped. The silence was total. Even the usual night sounds, insects, distant waves had ceased. The jungle held its breath. Marcus stood at the window, phone in hand, staring into darkness that suddenly felt malevolent. He was acutely aware of how isolated he was. No neighbors for miles, no phone signal. The nearest town, a 40-minute drive away. Something moved at the edge of the property. Marcus squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. A figure, human-sized, but not quite human-shaped. It stood just beyond the stone wall, perfectly still, facing the house. Marcus's hand shook as he raised his phone again, trying to record. But when he looked at the screen, nothing was there, just empty jungle. When he looked up again, the figure was gone. He stood at the window for another hour, but nothing else happened. Eventually, exhausted and confused, he went back to bed. This time, he didn't sleep at all. Dawn came as a relief. Marcus made strong coffee and sat on the deck, trying to rationalize what he'd experienced. Drums could be explained. Maybe there was a luau or celebration happening on a neighboring property. The shapes and lights could have been his imagination, fueled by jet lag and the disorientation of being in a strange place. And a figure, probably just a trick of the eye. Shadows and trees forming a pattern that looked human. He almost convinced himself. The day was overcast, unusual for this coast. Grey clouds hung low over the ocean, and the air felt heavy and still. Marcus decided to drive into Hilo, the largest town on this side of the island. He needed supplies, and honestly, he needed to be around other people. The drive helped. Highway 19 was busy with traffic rental cars full of tourists, locals heading to work. Normal life. The surreal events of the night seemed distant, almost silly. Hilo was charming, a small city with historic buildings, local shops, a farmer's market. Marcus wandered through the market, buying fresh produce and chatting with vendors. One older woman selling flower lace noticed him looking at a display of lava rock jewelry. "Those are beautiful." "Yeah," she said, her accent soft and musical. "But you be careful with those stones. Peel is very particular about her rocks." "Peel?" Marcus asked. "The goddess of volcanoes and fire. This whole island is her body. The stones are her bones." She smiled, but there was something serious in her eyes. You take them, she remembers. She always remembers. Marcus thought about the stone he'd pocketed from the hay-ho, the stone that had vanished from his deck. He felt a chill despite the warm day. What happens if someone takes a stone? He asked, trying to sound casual. The woman's smile faded. You return it, fast as you can. If you already took one, you go back to exactly where you found it, and you leave it there with an offering. Say you're sorry, mean it, and if you don't, then Pele sends her reminders, small ones at first, then bigger. She studied his face. You took a stone, didn't you? Marcus opened his mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. There was something in the woman's gaze, not judgment, but recognition, like she'd seen this before. I don't have it anymore, he said quietly. It disappeared. The woman nodded slowly. That's how it starts. She takes it back herself. But that doesn't mean she forgives. You were on sacred ground, yeah? Took from Ohio. How did you? I can see it on you. The mark. You broke Capu. She shook her head. You need to go back. Tonight, before midnight. You need to bring an offering, flowers, food, something meaningful to you. And you need to apologize. Really apologize. Show respect. This is ridiculous, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's just superstition. Superstition. The woman's expression hardened. These islands are older than your mainland cities. The gods here are older than your gods. You don't have to believe, but you should respect. Otherwise, she trailed off, looking past him toward the mountains. Otherwise, what? Otherwise the drums get louder, the shadows get closer, and eventually, Pele takes what's owed. She turned away, tending to her flowers. Go back tonight, make it right, or leave the island. Those are your only choices. Marcus left the market, shaken. He told himself the woman was just a local playing into tourist superstitions, but her words had resonated with something he felt but couldn't articulate a sense that he'd crossed a line, broken a rule more fundamental than property law. He spent the rest of the day in Hilo, putting off the return to the house. But as afternoon became evening, he knew he had to go back. Where else would he go? He'd paid for 2 weeks at the rental. He wasn't going to let superstition and bad dreams ruin his vacation. The drive back seemed longer, darker. The clouds had thickened, and by the time Marcus reached the dirt road to the house, rain had started falling. Not the gentle, warm rain of Hawaiian stereotype, but a cold, driving rain that hammered the Jeep's windshield. The house came into view through the downpour, and Marcus felt his stomach drop. Every light in the building was on. He'd left that morning with everything switched off. He was certain of it. But now the house blazed like a beacon against the dark jungle, every window illuminated. Marcus parked the Jeep and sat there, rain drumming on the fabric roof, trying to decide what to do. Call someone, but there was no phone signal. Drive back to town. The thought of another hour on these dark roads was somehow worse than confronting whatever was in the house. He grabbed his phone as a flashlight and ran through the rain to the front door. It was unlocked. Marcus was absolutely certain he'd locked it. His hand hovered over the handle as he debated. Then the lights inside flickered once, twice, and went out entirely. Complete darkness. His phone light seemed pathetically small against the void. Marcus pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Hello," he called. "Anyone here?" No response. Just the sound of rain on the roof and his own breathing. He moved through the house room by room, checking corners and closets with his phone light. Nothing. No signs of intrusion. Everything exactly as he'd left it, except for the lights being on, except for the door being unlocked. Marcus found the breaker box and flipped switches until the power came back. The house lit up normally, and that normalcy made everything feel slightly less threatening. Probably just an electrical issue. Old house, jungle location, heavy rain power glitches made sense. He made dinner, though he had no appetite, poured a large glass of whiskey, stood at the window watching the rain, trying not to think about drums or shadows or the stone he'd taken. The woman's words kept repeating in his mind. Go back tonight. Make it right. It was just superstition. Had to be. But at 11 p.m., Marcus found himself standing at the door with a flashlight, a plastic bag containing flowers, fruit, and a small bottle of whiskey, an offering, and his rain jacket. He wasn't superstitious. He didn't believe in curses, but he needed to sleep tonight, and he knew he wouldn't rest until he'd at least tried to make this right. The rain had lessened to a steady drizzle as Marcus made his way across the property toward the stone wall. His flashlight beam cut through darkness that seemed thicker than normal. The jungle pressed close, and he had the unsettling feeling of being watched from the trees. He found the collapsed section of wall and crossed over into the house. The sacred site looked different at night, more orderly somehow. The stone platforms seemed to form clearer patterns in the flashlight beam. And at the center, where the spiral of carved stones had been, there was now just bare ground, a perfect circle of black earth. Marcus approached the circle and set down his offering. Flowers first, arranged carefully, then the fruit, then the whiskey, poured out onto the ground. He felt ridiculous doing this, a grown man making offerings to mythology, but he did it anyway, because some part of him, some instinctive, primal part recognized that he'd broken a rule, taken something that wasn't his from a place that demanded respect. "I'm sorry," he said aloud, his voice strange in the dark jungle. "I didn't mean any disrespect. I didn't understand. I'm sorry for taking the stone. I'm sorry for crossing the boundary. Please, please forgive me." The words felt inadequate, hollow, but he didn't know what else to say. Marcus stood there in the drizzle, waiting for some sign of forgiveness, absolution, thunder to crack, lights to flash, but nothing happened. Just rain and darkness and the distant sound of the ocean. He waited another 5 minutes, then turned to leave. That's when he saw them, figures, standing at the edges of the clearing. Human-shaped, but wrong, too tall, too thin, with movements that didn't quite match normal human motion. There were 7 of them, positioned at intervals around the Hio's perimeter, watching him. Marcus's breath caught. He swept his flashlight across them, and it passed through like they weren't there, but when he looked with his direct vision, they remained, solid, real. "I've returned what I took," Marcus said, hating the tremor in his voice. "I've apologized. I've brought offerings. What more do you want?" The figures didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there, watching with eyes that reflected no light. Marcus backed toward the wall, keeping his flashlight trained on where the figures stood. They didn't follow, didn't approach, but they didn't leave either. They just watched as he scrambled back over the stone wall and ran through the rain toward the house. He made it inside, locked the door, checked every window. Then he sat on the couch, lights on, and waited for morning. The drums started at 3 a.m., but this time, Marcus didn't just hear them, he felt them. The whole house vibrated with each beat. Pictures rattled on the walls. Water in his glass rippled with the rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. And this time, when Marcus looked out the windows, he saw them clearly. Dozens of figures, processing through the jungle in lines, carrying torches that burned red and gold, moving in rhythm with the drums. They weren't ghosts. They were too solid for that to present. They were something else, something that existed in the same space but different time, visible only under certain conditions. The procession circled the house, once, twice, 3 times. Each circuit brought them closer. By the 3rd circle, Marcus could see their faces or the carved masks they wore, could hear them chanting in a language he didn't recognize, but somehow understood. They were warriors, ancient Hawaiian warriors, marching on the night march to the Wakaipi, and he had broken their peace. The drums stopped. The figures stopped. They formed a semicircle in front of the house, facing the windows, facing Marcus. One figure stepped forward from the group, taller than the others, wearing a more elaborate feathered cape and helmet. It raised one hand and pointed at the house, at Marcus. Then, as one, the figures began walking forward, toward the house, toward him. Marcus ran to the bedroom, grabbed his phone and keys, and sprinted for the door. He had to get out, had to leave. The apology hadn't been enough. The offering hadn't been enough. Whatever he'd violated required more than words and flowers. He threw open the front door, and the figures were gone. The jungle was empty, silent. No torches, no drums, no warriors. Just rain and darkness and the normal sounds of night. Marcus stood in the doorway, rain soaking him, breathing hard. Had he imagined it all? Some kind of panic-induced hallucination? But the house still hummed faintly, vibrating with residual energy from the drums. And when Marcus looked at his hands, he saw they were shaking uncontrollably. He couldn't stay here. Not another night, not another hour. Marcus threw his belongings into his bag without bothering to fold them, grabbed his laptop and toiletries, left everything else. He'd forfeit the rental fee. He'd go to the airport and catch the first flight to anywhere. He didn't care. He just needed to be away from this place. He was loading the Jeep when he felt it. Heat, not external heat. Internal, like a fever suddenly spiking. It spread from his chest outward, burning through his veins. Marcus gasped and dropped his bag. The heat intensified, becoming pain. He looked down at his hands and saw them beginning to glow. Faint red light emanating from beneath his skin, tracing the patterns of his veins and arteries. The stone, the carved stone he'd taken from the heiau, even though it had vanished, even though he'd returned with offerings and apologies, something of it remained inside him. A mark, a connection. Peel had marked him. Marcus fell to his knees in the rain, the heat unbearable now. His vision blurred. The world tilted and swam. He could hear the ocean roaring, or maybe it was blood in his ears. Could feel the island beneath him, not just the ground, but the volcanic rock, the magma deep below, the primal fire that had created this land. And he understood. The stone hadn't been a souvenir, it had been a seal, a barrier, something placed deliberately on the heiau to contain or bind something beneath. By taking it, Marcus had broken that seal. He'd let something out, and now it was inside him. The heat peaked, becoming white-hot agony. Marcus screamed into the rain. Then, just as suddenly as it had come, the heat vanished. He collapsed onto the wet ground, gasping. When he looked at his hands, the glow was gone, the pain was gone. He felt normal, exhausted and terrified, but normal. Marcus pulled himself upright and looked at the house. The lights were off. The jungle was quiet. Everything seemed peaceful, but he knew better now. He knew that some boundaries existed for reasons beyond human law. Some places demanded respect, not because of property rights or cultural sensitivity, but because the alternative was dangerous. He'd broken those rules. And even though he'd tried to make amends, some violations couldn't be undone with apologies. Marcus got in the jeep and drove, not toward the airport, toward Hilo, toward the farmer's market where he'd spoken with the woman. Maybe she would know what to do. Maybe she could help. Or maybe it was already too late. Chapter 4. The price. Marcus reached Hilo as dawn was breaking. The town was just waking up, shops rolling up their shutters, delivery trucks making their rounds. Everything painfully normal. He found the farmer's market, but it was closed. Wouldn't open for hours. Marcus sat in the jeep, exhausted and shivering despite the warm morning, and tried to think. He needed help. But from who? What would he even say? "Hi, I'm cursed because I took a sacred stone." His phone had signal here. Marcus pulled it out and started searching. Hawaiian curses, Peel's curse, breaking Kapu. The results were a mix of tourist blog posts, mythology sites, and forums where people discussed supernatural experiences. One forum caught his attention. A post from 6 months ago. "I took lava rock from a heiau, and now I can't sleep. Has anyone broken this curse?" The responses were split between people saying it was all superstition and others sharing similar experiences. One response stood out. "You need to talk to a kahuna, a real one, not the tourist stuff. They're the only ones who can help with serious Kapu violations. There's one on the Big Island. Her name is Lalani. She lives near Volcano Village." A link to a phone number followed. Marcus called it without hesitation. It rang 4 times. Then a woman's voice answered. "Aloha. Hi, my name is Marcus Webb. I was given this number by someone online who said you might be able to help with a spiritual problem." A long pause. Then, "What did you take?" Marcus's breath caught. "How did you?" It's always the same story. Mainland visitors think our sacred things are souvenirs. "What did you take?" "A stone. From a Hawaii. I put it back. I brought offerings, but it's not enough. Something's still wrong." Another pause. "Where are you?" "Hilo. Come to my home. I'll send you the address. Come now. Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anyone else about this. Do you understand?" "Yes, good. And Mr. Webb, don't lie to me about what you did or what you've experienced. I can only help if you tell the truth." The call ended. A text arrived with an address, 194289 Honani Road, Volcano Village. Marcus drove. The route took him inland, climbing the slopes of Kilauea. The landscape changed from coastal rainforest to something stranger, open fields of black lava, recent enough to still be bare of vegetation. Vents in the ground released steam. The air smelled of sulfur. This was Peel's domain, the heart of her power. Marcus found the address, a simple wooden house, painted cheerful yellow, surrounded by tropical gardens. Nothing about it suggested mysticism or danger. Just a pleasant home in a quiet village. A woman was waiting on the porch. She was middle-aged, with long black hair streaked with gray. wearing jeans and a tank top. No ceremonial robes, no obvious indicators of spiritual authority. Just a normal person. "Marcus Webb?" she asked as he approached. "Yes, you're Leilani. I am. Come inside." The interior of the house was similarly normal, comfortable furniture, family photos on the walls, a cat sleeping on a chair. The only unusual element was a small altar in one corner, adorned with flowers, carved wooden idols, and offerings of food. Leilani gestured for Marcus to sit at the kitchen table. She poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if he wanted any, then sat across from him. "Tell me everything," she said, "from the beginning. Don't leave anything out." Marcus did. The rental house, the hour beyond the wall, the carved stones, his decision to take one, its disappearance, the dreams, the drums, the figures in the jungle, the procession, the burning sensation in his chest. All of it. Leilani listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious as the story progressed. When Marcus finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You understand you broke one of our most fundamental capu," she finally said. It wasn't a question. "I do now. I didn't then." Ignorance isn't an excuse, especially not for this. She stood and walked to the altar, touching one of the carved figures. "The heiau you disturbed you know what it was?" "No, it was a heiau dedicated to Pele, not for worship, but for containment. The stones you found weren't decorations, they were seals, each one carved by a kahuna centuries ago and blessed with prayers and offerings. They kept something bound, something dangerous." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "The thing inside me. Yes and no. You didn't consume it or let it possess you, but by breaking the seal, you created a connection, a bridge. It can use you now, can reach through you into this world. What is it? What did I let out?" Leilani turned to face him. "We call them Na, Kekio Ka'aki, the children of the fire. They're aspects of Pele herself, her rage, her hunger, her destructive power made manifest. Usually they exist only in the volcano, in the deep places where lava flows. But sometimes, when they surface, when they threaten to destroy everything, we bind them. We seal them in sacred places with powerful magic. And I released one. You weakened the seal. It's not fully released yet, but every night, at the hours of power 3 a.m., the hour of spirits, it tests its bonds, grows stronger. Soon it will break free completely. What happens then?" Leilani looked at him with something like pity. "It will burn. Everything. The house, the jungle, anyone in its path. Its fire given consciousness. Its only nature is to consume." Marcus put his head in his hands. "How do I stop it? How do I fix this?" "There are only 2 ways. The first is to create a new seal, stronger than the original. That requires time, materials, and ceremonies that must be done during specific moon phases. It would take weeks, maybe months, and the thing breaks free before then, almost certainly. Which leaves the second option." Marcus looked up. "What's the second option?" Leilani returned to the table and sat down. "A direct offering to Pele, a sacrifice, something of great personal value, freely given with sincere respect and humility. If she accepts it, she may recall her child, return it to the volcano where it belongs. A sacrifice. Like what? Money. My car. I'll give anything. Not material things. Pele has no use for those. It must be something that costs you, something that changes you. A sacrifice that proves you understand what you've done and accept the consequences." Marcus's mind raced. "I don't understand. What kind of sacrifice? That's for you to determine. Everyone's offering is different, but it must be something that matters. Something you can't replace or get back. And it must be given willingly, at the heiau where you broke the seal, before the child of fire breaks free completely. How much time do I have?" "Tonight is the 3rd night since you took the stone. By Hawaiian tradition, 3 is the number of power. If the child breaks free, it will be tonight. So you must make your offering tonight, before the hour of spirits. But I don't know what to offer. How am I supposed to figure that out?" Leilani stood, indicating the conversation was over. "Look inside yourself. Think about what brought you here, what you were running from, what you were seeking. The offering must be personal. It must hurt, and it must be true. If you try to cheat, if you offer something you don't truly value, Pele will know, and she won't accept." Marcus rose shakily. "What if I can't think of anything? What if I offer the wrong thing? Then the child of fire will burn, and you will burn with it, and the house, and the jungle, and anyone else who happens to be nearby." Leilani walked him to the door. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I wish I could give you better guidance. But this is your cap you broke. Your violation. Only you can make it right." Marcus stepped out into the bright morning. Behind him, Leilani spoke one last time. "One more thing. Whatever you decide to sacrifice, you must place it in the exact center of the Hayo, where the spiral of stones was. Then you must speak your offering aloud. Tell Peel what you're giving and why. If your heart is true, if your sacrifice is genuine, she will accept. Her child will return to the volcano. The seal will rebuild itself. And if not, then run. Run as far and as fast as you can. Because fire doesn't forgive." The door closed. Marcus stood in the cheerful yellow house's driveway, surrounded by tropical flowers and birdsong, and tried to understand what he'd just been told. A sacrifice. Something that mattered. Something that cost him. He had until tonight to figure out what that meant. Chapter 5. The offering. Marcus drove back to the rental house in a daze. His mind kept turning over Leilani's words. A sacrifice. Something personal. Something that hurt. Money wouldn't work. He could always make more. His car, his laptop, his possessions all replaceable. What did he have that he truly valued? What could he give up that would constitute a genuine sacrifice? He thought about his life in Seattle. His job as a data analyst, prestigious, well-paid, stable. His apartment in Capitol Hill. His routines, his carefully constructed existence. Was he supposed to give that up? Quit his job? But that felt performative. He didn't even like his job that much. Sacrificing something you didn't value wasn't a sacrifice at all. Marcus reached the house and sat in the Jeep, staring at the building. In daylight, it looked benign, beautiful even. Just a modern vacation rental with ocean views. Hard to believe that tonight, something ancient and destructive might break free here. He went inside and made coffee, trying to think. The house was quiet now, peaceful. The supernatural events of the previous nights felt distant, almost dreamlike. But Marcus knew they were real. He could still feel the echo of that burning sensation in his chest. The connection Leilani had mentioned. What did he value? His career? Not really. He'd been burning out for months before this trip. His possessions, all replaceable. His freedom, maybe. But how could he sacrifice that? Marcus walked through the house, coffee in hand, looking at his belongings scattered around. His laptop on the dining table, his camera on the counter, his phone in his pocket. All tools of his modern life, all ultimately meaningless. His phone. Marcus stopped walking, struck by a thought. His phone, not the device itself, but what it represented. Constant connectivity, the ability to work from anywhere. The thing that had kept him chained to his job, even on vacation. How many times had he checked his email yesterday? How many work messages had he read and responded to? He was supposed to be on vacation, but he hadn't really left work, hadn't really disconnected. The phone was his leash, keeping him tethered to a life he claimed to be taking a break from. Could that be it? Could the sacrifice be his connection to that life? But that still felt too easy. He could always get a new phone, reconnect later. Unless the sacrifice was more than the device. Unless it was the decision the phone represented. Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. A real sacrifice, something that cost him, something he couldn't take back. What if the offering was his entire life back in Seattle? His job, his apartment, his carefully planned career trajectory. What if the sacrifice was choosing to stay in Hawaii, to not return to the mainland, to fundamentally change his life path? That would hurt, that would cost him everything he'd built. But wasn't that the point? Hadn't he come here because he was unhappy? Because something was missing? Maybe Peel was offering him a choice. Continue with a life that was killing him slowly, or burn it down and start fresh. Literally, it felt right, terrifying, but right. Marcus spent the day preparing. He emailed his boss, not explaining the supernatural situation, obviously, but giving notice, effective immediately. He'd send a formal resignation letter later, but he wanted the decision made now, before he could second-guess himself. He called his landlord and explained he wouldn't be returning, forfeited his security deposit, asked them to box up his belongings and ship them to a storage facility. He researched what it would take to stay in Hawaii, work permits, housing, job prospects. It all seemed impossibly complicated, but also exciting, terrifying and exciting in equal measure. By late afternoon, Marcus had made the decision. His old life was over. Whether he succeeded in making the offering or not, he wouldn't be going back to Seattle. This would be his sacrifice, his entire mainland existence, his career, his home, his identity as a successful young professional. He would give it all up, stay in Hawaii, figure out a new path. It was the hardest thing he could imagine sacrificing, which meant it was probably right. As evening approached, Marcus gathered what he would bring to the hatway. He decided to make the phone itself the physical offering, the device that represented his old life. He would place it in the center of the heiau, explain what it meant, and tell Peel he was giving up everything it represented. He wrote a short speech in his notebook, practicing the words. They had to be genuine, true. Lalani had emphasized that his heart had to be in it. The sun set. Marcus watched it from the deck, possibly for the last time. If this didn't work, if Peel rejected his offering, he might not survive the night. The child of fire would break free, and it would burn. He was surprisingly calm about that possibility. At 10 p.m., Marcus gathered his things, his phone, a flashlight, the notebook with his speech. He dressed in his hiking boots and rain jacket, not sure what to expect. Then he walked across the property toward the stone wall. The jungle was alive with sound tonight. Insects chirring, birds calling, the constant background roar of the ocean. The air felt charged, like before a storm. Marcus crossed the wall into the heiau. The sacred site looked different again, more orderly. The stone platforms seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. And at the center, where the spiral of ceiling stones had been, the ground was marked with a perfect circle not of earth, but of cooled lava, black and glassy and smooth. This was new, the manifestation of the child of fire preparing to emerge. Marcus approached the circle carefully. He could feel heat radiating from it, even though the stone looked cold. The connection in his chest pulsed in rhythm with some deep vibration from the earth. He checked his watch. 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes until the hour of spirits. 15 minutes until 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, the fourth night. The breaking point. Marcus knelt at the edge of the circle and placed his phone in the exact center. The device looked absurdly modern against the ancient lava, a rectangle of glass and aluminum on volcanic rock. He pulled out his notebook and read the words he'd written. Then he set the notebook aside and spoke from his heart instead. Pele, he began, his voice steady despite his fear. I came to your island as a tourist, as someone who thought this place existed for my entertainment. I broke your kapu. I took from sacred ground. I violated the boundaries meant to protect both this land and people like me. The heat from the circle intensified slightly. I've brought an offering. This phone represents my old life, my career, my identity, everything I thought mattered. But it's not just the phone I'm sacrificing. I'm giving up that entire life. I'm not going back to the mainland. I'm staying here, in Hawaii. I'm starting over. Marcus swallowed hard. This was the crucial part. I know this is the easy path in some ways. I was unhappy there, burned out. Part of me wanted to escape. But it's also the hardest thing I can imagine. Giving up everything I've built. All my security, my plan for the future. It terrifies me. He looked at the phone, gleaming in the moonlight. So I offer you my old life, completely, freely. I'll figure out a new path here, one built on respect for this land and its people. I'll learn, I'll listen, I'll understand that some places demand reverence, not consumption. The vibration from the earth grew stronger. Marcus could feel it in his bones now, a deep thrumming that matched his heartbeat. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for breaking the seal, for disturbing this sacred place. I can't undo it, but I can change. I can be better. He took a breath and spoke the final words. I offer you my life as it was. Please accept this sacrifice and recall your child. Let the seal be restored. And if I'm found worthy, let me stay on your island and learn to live here with proper respect. Marcus stood and backed away from the circle, his heart pounding. The phone sat there, inert and modern, on ancient volcanic rock. Nothing happened. Had he made a mistake? Was the offering insufficient? Then the ground shook, not violently, but deeply. A tremor from far below that rose through the earth and into the house. The stone platforms vibrated, dust fell from the carved pillars, and the circle in the center began to glow. Red light emanated from cracks in the lava rock, spreading in web-like patterns from the phone outward. The heat intensified until Marcus had to retreat further, shielding his face with his arm. The phone began to melt, plastic and glass and metal all liquefying together, dripping into the cracks in the stone. But it wasn't normal melting. The materials were being transformed, absorbed, taken into the rock itself. The red glow brightened, and suddenly the child of fire was there, not fully materialized, but present, visible as a shape made of flame and heat, humanoid but wrong, too tall, too thin, with eyes like magma pools. It rose from the circle, reaching toward the sky with arms that dripped fire. Marcus froze, unable to move or look away. This was what he'd released, what had been sealed for centuries, a fragment of Peel's rage given form and hunger. The child of fire turned its burning gaze on Marcus. He felt it looking into him, through him, examining his heart and his intentions, judging whether his offering was true. Time seemed to stop. Marcus held his breath, acutely aware that this moment would determine everything. His life, his future, whether the seal would hold. Then the child of fire spoke, not with words, but with a feeling that filled Marcus's mind. Acceptance, recognition, and something almost like approval. It turned away from Marcus and began to descend back into the circle. The flames that made up its body flowed downward, returning to the cracks in the lava rock. As it sank, the carved ceiling stones began to rise, emerging from the ground where they'd been hidden, drawn up by some magnetic force. They arranged themselves in a spiral around the circle, each stone settling into place with a soft click. 7 stones, 7 seals, restored by the firechild itself before it returned to its volcanic prison. The red glow faded, the heat decreased, the vibration in the earth ceased, and just like that, it was done. Marcus stood in the suddenly quiet Howie, breathing hard, his legs shaky. The stone circle was still there, but cold now, dark. The carved stones stood sentinel around it, their markings gleaming faintly in the moonlight. And his phone was gone, completely absorbed into the lava rock. He'd done it. The offering had been accepted. Marcus sank to his knees, overwhelmed with relief and exhaustion, and something else, a sense of rightness, of having made the correct choice, even though it terrified him. He stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the sacred site, as the moon wheeled overhead and the jungle sounds resumed their normal chorus. Eventually, he stood and walked back to the house. His watch read 3:32 a.m. He'd passed through the hour of spirits successfully. Inside, Marcus collapsed onto the bed and slept deeply and dreamlessly for the first time since arriving on the island. Marcus stayed in Hawaii. Epilogue: not at the rental house. He checked out the next morning and never returned. Instead, he found a small apartment in Hilo and began the complicated process of starting over. Work visa applications, job hunting, learning about Hawaiian culture, properly this time, with respect and humility. He got a job at a marine biology research center, data analysis work that felt meaningful in a way his old job never had. Met people, made friends, slowly built a new life. Sometimes, late at night, he thought about that moment in the Hawaiian, the child of fire rising from the circle, judging him, accepting his sacrifice. He thought about how close he'd come to dying, to burning along with everything around him because of his ignorance and disrespect. He'd gotten lucky. Or maybe not lucky, maybe he'd simply been sincere. Maybe Peel had seen something in him worth saving. Marcus never took lava rocks again, never crossed Kapu boundaries. When tourists asked him for souvenir recommendations, he gently steered them away from anything involving nature's artifacts. Some listened, some didn't. He hoped the ones who didn't would be as fortunate as he'd been. But he suspected many weren't. The rental house remained available on the booking sites. Other tourists came and went, most of them never venturing beyond the property line, never noticing the stone wall or the Hauer beyond it. The seals held, but Marcus knew they were there, knew what they contained. And he knew that some boundaries exist for reasons beyond human understanding, that some places demand respect not because of law or social convention, but because the alternative is fire. He lived with that knowledge now. Let it shape his choices and his relationships with the land. And though his life was smaller than it had been, less money, less prestige, less clear path forward, it felt more real, more authentic, more his. 1 year after that night, Marcus hiked to the heiau, not to cross the wall or disturb anything, just to stand at the boundary and pay his respects. The jungle had reclaimed much of the site. Vines covered the stone platforms. The carved pillars were barely visible through vegetation, but the 7 stones still stood in their spiral, marking the seal, keeping something dangerous contained, a reminder that not everything should be freed, that some prisons exist to protect the world from what's inside. Marcus left flowers at the walls, base a simple offering of gratitude. Then he hiked back down to the coast in his new life. Behind him, the jungle was quiet, peaceful, the seal held, and deep beneath the earth, in chambers of magma where the children of fire dwelt, Pale remembered the man who had broken her kapu and made amends. She would not forget. The islands never forgot. But she had accepted his offering, and in accepting it, she had given him something precious, the chance to start again, to build a life founded on respect rather than consumption. It was more than most received, more than most deserved. Marcus would spend the rest of his days trying to prove worthy of that gift. Hawaii is paradise, but paradise isn't free. It comes with responsibilities, rules, boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. The islands welcome visitors, but they demand respect. From the mountains to the beaches, from the rainforests to the volcanic slopes, everything here is sacred. Every stone, every tree, every grain of black sand. Take only photographs and memories. Leave only footprints and, even then, tread lightly. If you find yourself drawn to places marked kapu, if you're tempted to take souvenirs from sacred sites, if you think the rules don't apply to you, remember Marcus Webb. Remember how close he came to burning. Remember that some violations can't be fixed with apologies, that some boundaries, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. And remember that Pele is watching, always watching, the goddess of fire and volcanoes, who created these islands and who can reclaim them whenever she chooses. Treat her lands with respect. Honor the kapu. Leave the sacred things where they lie. Because if you don't, you might hear drums at 3 a.m., might see torches in the jungle, might feel fire burning in your chest, and you might find yourself making a sacrifice you never imagined. The islands are paradise, but paradise has a price. And Peel always collects what's owed. Sleep well, and if you're planning a trip to Hawaii, remember, some souvenirs aren't worth taking.
If this story stayed with you, you're always welcome here. Subscribe to the channel and join us for more stories like this. Quiet, mysterious, and meant to be heard. Until next time.